We're here with Michael Moretta. So in my journey to figure out the how to get into the real estate industry, my journey to starting my own real estate business, I'm seeking out experts in the industry. So I'm super happy today to have Michael Moretta here with us. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
Great. So I want to kick it off by asking you, you're in wholesale real estate, right?
So wholesaling is like my bread and butter. Like that's what I do on a daily basis. That's what from beginning of the day to the end. But I'm also more of a serial entrepreneur. I have other ventures, but wholesaling is my forte.
So there's a lot of people out there, like hundreds of thousands of people out there that have seen wholesaling and want to get into wholesaling. And for a lot of those people, they are dreaming about their very first deal.
Right.
And I'm curious for you, what was it like when you finally closed your very first wholesale real estate deal? How did that feel?
Believe it or not, my very first deal, can you guess how much I made on that?
$500.
It was $1,300.
Okay.
But that was, the best $1,300 of my life because I spent years working odd jobs here and there, getting paid $5,000 a month or something. But the moment that I got that $1,300 myself without having to work for anybody, that felt like $1 million to me.
Hell yeah. So walk me through that first deal. How did you even hear about wholesaling real estate in the first place?
So I was working at a Home Depot, and my shift started at 4 a.m. and it ended like at 12 noon. And during the early mornings, I would have so much time because there's no customers, right? So I would talk to one of my coworkers about different ideas, and then I wanted to start this fishing company, and then I wanted to start an Airbnb company. So I settled on Airbnb, but during my research for the business, I came across wholesaling. And I came across one of those top influencers. And as soon as I found out about it, I dropped everything else and just focused on that.
Okay. Yeah. So what were your first steps when you first saw it on TikTok or Instagram and you said, wow, this seems interesting? What did you do from there?
I'm always, I'm a go-getter. Whenever I see opportunities, I take them. And I've been like that my whole life. But as soon as I found out about it, I said, okay, well, I got to start calling people. I got to start calling homeowners and stuff like that. And,
okay,
as much as I can every day. And that's what I did.
So how long did it take you from when you first heard about it to when you landed your first deal?
Sheesh, it took a little over a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's the amazing thing, too. I think a lot of people, when they find something interesting, like a new business or a new side hustle, people say these days, right? They spend, 20 hours on it. They spend like half a week on it. And they're like, dang, this is hard. Right. And then they end up giving up.
Oh, yeah.
But the ones that stick through things, they end up the ones making things happen, the one that can grind through the nose, grind through the frustration.
Right.
Yeah. So what did you do during that year?
I was working at a Home Depot. So I would wake up at 3 a.m., go to work at 4. My lunch break was at 9 a.m., so perfect time for cold calling. Yeah. So I called during my lunch break, and then I called as soon as I clocked out of work. So I was trying to hit 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and nothing. I couldn't land one single deal. I didn't get one property under contract. And I felt discouraged many times, but the more I did it, the more confident I sounded over the phone. And eventually I got a lead from my website. So it wasn't even an outbound lead. It was an inbound lead. And I called the person up, and she wanted to sell because she tried to flip a house, realized she didn't have enough money, so she needed to get rid of it. So
great.
I mean, that's the one. That was the one.
4 hours a day, cold calling. How many hours do you think you put in cold calling before you got that first inbound lead?
I'm not.
How many weeks do you think you did that?
The math is too big for me to do it on my head, but I did a lot.
Wow.
I mean, I had to do, I can't even do the math.
A couple hundred hours probably.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Wow. So that's one of the biggest things is like, if you find something that you're interested in, you have to have that like why, that motivation. So what kept you going even though you were getting all these no's in the phone call, probably getting hung up on? What kept you going?
It has to be the want. The want has to be greater than anything.
Yeah.
And I wanted to land it. I wanted to make money. And I knew if I stopped, I'm just going to be stuck at this job that I hate. So the want to change my life is what kept me going.
Yeah. So what changed after that first deal? Were you still working your 9 to 5? Did you quit immediately? What happened after you landed that first deal?
I took that $1,300 and then I quit my job
Wow.
immediately. But it was kind of like a domino effect, because as soon as I closed it, everything kind of fell into place. And then instead of a year for my next deal, it was a few months. And then after that one was a month, and then a couple every month.
Did you have any partners when you were working through these, or did you just do everything by yourself?
I had a few partners throughout the journey, and I had a partner in the beginning, and then months without anything, partner fell off. I got another partner who was excited, and then realized how hard it is. Another one fell off, and it wasn't until October of 22, last year, was when I found that one partner. You know how you find someone and it's just chemistry right away, and you know that person wants the same thing as you.
Right.
So now, till this day, he's still my partner, and we're working at it every day.
Awesome. So
shout out to Luis.
Luis, what's up? So how long ago was that first deal? How much time ago?
Sheesh. It had to be right, like pandemic year, so 2020.
Okay. And fast forward to today, what's your business look like today?
3 to 7 a month.
Wow.
Depending on the month. Some months are good, some months are bad. And we're getting to the point where we can go 1-2 months without closing anything, and we'll still be good. And it's usually not because we don't have deals. It's usually because closing date is not for 16 days, 30 days, 60 days. So
yeah, you've built out a pipeline at this point where it's like you may not be closing every single a week or one a week, but you have things in the pipeline that are going to be closing.
Exactly, things are in the pipeline for sure.
Yeah. So one thing amazing about this that attracted me to the idea of wholesaling real estate, and I'm sure so many others too, is just the whole dynamic of it. The first thing is like, that you hear that phone calls and cold calling and outreach is one of the main ways to talk to people and get leads.
Right.
The other thing is that it requires no real upfront capital. So it's one way to get into real estate without having to have skin in the game.
Right.
And another thing that's interesting about it is it's so unbelievably simple in its concept.
Right.
But simple doesn't mean easy.
Right. Right? Exactly.
So it's the simplest thing. It's like you find someone that wants something.
Right.
You find someone that has something, and all you do is you just connect those two people.
Right.
And there's a lot of things that go on in between, but at its essence, that's really what all kinds of business is, right?
Right. Yeah. And like you said, it is a simple concept. Like wholesaling itself is really easy, in terms of how you say technicalities. But what's hard is the willingness to keep doing it, to see results.
And that's what I love about it, because as a competitive person, I think a lot of people in business are competitive people. We look at something and we say, okay, all the pieces are there. You got people that want to sell, you got people that want to buy, and all I have to do is find each one of those and then connect those two.
Right.
And the reason why so many people don't succeed in an industry like this is because they quit before they find their first deal. Right. And when I look at that, I say, well, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep pushing until I make, And so I think that people with that mentality are the ones that end up doing something. The ones that are dumb enough to believe that they're actually going to make this work usually are the ones that end up doing it.
And that's usually, that's the story with all entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Especially the big ones. They're dumb enough to believe their visions, and then those visions ended up becoming reality, and now they're they changed the world themselves.
So talk to me about your day-to-day operations of the business now. So what does the average day in a wholesaler look like for someone that has already kind of got some momentum? What do you do to further and grow that business every day?
So I'm a true believer that scaling a business should happen once you're earning a certain amount of income, right? Because this is what I feel a lot of entrepreneurs kind of shoot themselves in the foot, is they try to scale too fast. I believe that in the beginning, you should be doing as much as you possibly can for the business. So right now, we're still in the phase where we're doing mostly everything. We're getting leads, we're acquiring deals, and we're also selling them ourselves. We do a lot of on-market deals as well. But in our phase right now, we have one virtual assistant who's mostly doing all the administrative stuff. And at the end of the day, it's just how many offers can we send per week? Just myself and my partner. And, trying to close the ones that we have. And that's the day-to-day. The day-to-day is waking up, going through as many emails and text messages and phone calls that we had planned for the day, and then that's basically I'm on the phone all the time. So
I want to get into some of the specifics about the business. So again, you need to find someone that's willing to sell their house, and then find people that are willing to buy their house. So talk to me about how you find these deals in the first place.
Number one is realtors. We haven't cold called in a really long time.
Interesting.
Only because we found that it's more effective if we just go to realtors who are already talking to homeowners. We build, not only do we go after active listings, but we go to closed listings, expired listings. We contact the agents. And this is why. One, it's free. We don't have to skip trace because their phone number is attached to the, whether it's Zillow or Redfin. Two, we already know they want it to sell, whether it's a closed listing or active listing, expired listing, right? With closed listings, we build a relationship with the agent and let them know that, we're buying. Do you have anything else that's similar to the one you just closed?
Now, why would they want to work with you as opposed to getting that potential house and putting it back on the market?
It's a very good question. So, one, if they put it back in the market, they run the risk of another agent coming with their buyer and then them having to split the commission. So one thing that we always stress is, hey, do you have anything else that's similar? You can rep us on anything you bring us. So they can get the seller's commission and the buyer's commission.
I see. So are you doing a profit split with these realtors, or what's the benefit to the realtor?
So when a realtor sells a house, right, they're getting, whether it's 5%, 6%, it's negotiable, right, with the seller, but the seller agrees to a percentage, usually 5% of the purchase price goes to realtor fees. So when a realtor sells and another realtor comes in with the buyer on a regular transaction, that 5% is split down the middle with the seller's agent and then the buyer's agent. Right. So with us, even though it's off market now, they still have a listing agreement with the seller. So the seller still has to pay that 5%. But since we're going straight to the listing agent, there's no other agent to split that with. So it all goes to them.
Interesting. So in that case, is that considered an on-market sale? So let me just make sure I understand this because I'm curious. I've never heard this method before.
Sure.
So you find a listing, and the listing had recently expired. That means that it was on the market and it didn't sell.
Right.
So you're going to reach out to that listing agent and say, hey, I have buyers that are interested in purchasing a home similar to the one that you just had that didn't sell. Would you be interested in hearing offers from investors?
So the way we usually do it, and there's this fine line between, especially, and this in wholesaling. Do you say you're the buyer? Do you say you're not the buyer? Right. Yeah. We actually purchase with our own funds at times. So we always say that we're the buyer because we have the ability to purchase it, whether it's with our own funds or with transactional funding. So we always say that we're buying it. And for an expired listing, for example, if you were the agent, I would say, hey, Alistair, I see the property that you had listed a while back. Are you still in contact with the owner? Because I think this fits our buy box. And if you're still in contact with the owner, I think we could put something together.
Okay. And then you would just kind of make an offer at that point?
Yeah. So then at that point, they'll usually ask, oh, what are you looking to offer? And I say, okay, well, let me run some numbers really quick. And then I would say, come back with the offer. Do you think they'll accept anywhere in the mid to low 500s? Give them a range instead of an actual number. We don't give an actual number until we send them an email or a text with the terms.
I see.
And everything.
And then you submit this offer to them, and if they like it, they'll bring it to the seller. They bring it to the seller because they're obligated to, in a way, right?
They are obligated, though a lot of them don't follow that, but they are obligated to do so. Yeah.
And then let's say the seller accepts. So then you would do almost like a joint venture with the realtor in the sense that you split some kind of commission, or you have some kind of agreement where you...
Oh, no, the agent is going to get their commission from the seller.
Okay.
Because they still have that listing agreement stating that the seller has to pay, let's say, 5% of the purchase price to realtor fees, and they would get that.
I see.
And then us as a wholesaler will just get whatever we can, sell it for.
Right? I see. Okay, so let's say that you make an offer for $500,000.
Right.
And the seller's agent is going to get 5% of that. So that's $25,000. And then you would try to resell it or find a buyer that's going to buy it for, let's say, $525 at that point or something like that.
Something like that.
Right. And then so would the close be on market, or would it be considered off market close?
If it's, as long as it's not, so are you a realtor by any chance?
No.
Okay, so if you were any realtor or investor who also has their license can go onto the MLS, as long as it doesn't say active, it's considered off market.
Okay, I got it.
Because there's, sometimes they put them on hold. So if you go to I don't know if you're ever looking through Zillow and you see a property for sale and then all of a sudden it's not for sale, then it's back for sale. Usually they put it on hold.
Okay.
And when it's on hold, it's technically still on market.
Okay.
It's not off market until they canceled it or it expired.
I see. Okay. So then you have, so you bought it for $500,000. Seller makes theirs, and at that point, are you typically actually purchasing it, or at that point, are you doing a contract, an assignable contract?
Depends. It's easy. It's way easier to do an assignment, right? So, whenever there's a realtor involved, it has to be done through the Department of Real Estate Contracts. So you have to use the DRE contracts, and in California, each real estate contract is assignable by default.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
So, even though it's the Department of Real Estate contract, as soon as you find your buyer, you just let the agent know, hey, can we draft up an AOAA to assign it over to the end buyer.
Okay. So they'll give you like 30 days to close, this basically something like that.
Whatever you offer.
And then at that point, you would either close with your own funds or find someone to sign the contract to.
Yes. But even when we close with our own funds, we use transactional funding. So we're doing this double escrow at the same time.
What's double escrow?
So it's when we purchase the property from the seller, right? So let's say we have the seller here. I'm offering $500, right? And then I have a contract with the seller, okay? So instead of, you're my buyer, Alistair, instead of assigning it over to you, I'm going to give you a purchase agreement for this property that I'm technically the seller for. So you sign my purchase agreement, I sign their purchase agreement. So I'm the buyer for them, and I'm the seller for you.
Oh, wow. So it's almost like it changes hands 2 times in one transaction.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting.
So you have to put up the funds for the first escrow, because there's literally 2 escrow accounts open at the same time. So the transactional funding comes in and pays the 500, right? And then the buyer's funds come in and pays the 520. So then we close this escrow first. All the funds go to the seller, agent, etc. And then we close our escrow, and then the funds come back to the lender, gets their money back plus interest, and then I keep whatever's left.
Okay. How do the sellers and the seller's agents typically view this type of transaction? Do they are they salty about it at all?
A lot of them don't even know what's going on most of the time.
Okay.
But we have had, we've had we've had more agents feel a little bit sour about the whole thing, only because once everything closes and we get the settlement and the HUD ones and all that stuff, you can see what we did. You can see that there was 2 escrows and who got paid what. And then they kind of feel like, oh, well, you sold it for $50K more. That $50K could have been
mine. Could have been the buyers, or could have been the sellers,
which would have raised my commission. But
okay.
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Well, at the end of the day, it sat on the market for a period of time, and nobody purchased it. The seller, they sat there for 60 days with, the mic in their hand,
right.
basically. And the seller's agent wasn't able to do their job. And you came in, offered them something that they were willing to accept, and that made everybody happy. You were able to create a win-win-win situation out of something that the seller wanted to do 60 days ago.
Exactly. And, you have some agents that don't care, as long as I get paid type of realtors. And then you get the realtors who just don't like it. And there's a lot of in-betweens, but, with the realtors, we're more, we say, look, we're going to purchase it, but with the intent to resell it.
I see.
Whether they understand it or not,
And that's where the relationship building really comes into play.
Right.
You find some realtors that are good to you, that have, they just want to get deals done, that, are investor friendly or whatever. And then you continue to do more and more deals with them, right?
Right. Now I have, and that's another way that we get deals constantly is we've built so many relationships with so many realtors throughout the years, is that now we get deals from realtors all the time, whether it's an off-market deal or a on-market deal that their friend is the listing agent for. So opens up opportunities for sure.
Yeah. So how do you scale a business like this?
So
are you thinking about that? Like, do you set like goals for like the next chapter of this business, things like that?
So there's, and I talked about this with a lot of people, especially wholesalers that I know, is there's 2 avenues that you can go to with scaling a business like this. One, you can go towards the acquisition side, which is the finding of the sellers and stuff like that. Or you can go into the disposition side, which is selling deals to buyers, right? Because they're 2 different things, believe it or not. And when you're first starting in wholesaling, sometimes you're obligated to do both. But, a lot of wholesalers that I know, they're really good at finding deals, but they can't sell them. So that's where other people come in that have a bigger buyers list.
Right.
There's some people with really good buyers, but they just can't find deals, or they just don't cold call or stuff like that. So there's a lot of joint venturing going on, right? And a lot of wholesalers, most of their deals are joint ventured. We don't find the deal and the buyer for all of our deals. It's really hard to do that. So in scaling a business, you can either focus on acquisitions. So you're going to be more towards like, have you heard of home investors?
No.
Home investors, you've probably seen their billboard. It says, "We buy ugly houses," and it's like a caveman. So they're a perfect example of a super scaled business in the acquisition side. They're homeowner friendly, right? They're constant advertising, trying to get in front of a homeowner in trouble, right? Then on the exact opposite, we have companies like New Western, Fair Trade, where their forte is dispositions. They're really good at selling stuff because their buyers list is huge.
Yeah.
Right. And they have agents constantly talking to buyers. So, New Western or Fair Trade, they get deals from home investors. Home investors finds them, they assign them to New Western. New Western sells them, and
My last podcast, I had somebody from New Western who specialized in dispositions.
Really?
So yeah, I'll make that all makes sense. Yeah.
I love New Western. I work with a lot of New Western agents, especially my really good friend Rudy Gomez. If you listen,
Shout out.
yeah, shout out to Rudy Gomez.
Cool.
But yeah, I love New Western. New Western is a great company.
Awesome.
Especially if you're a wholesaler.
Yeah.
A lot of wholesalers don't know is that if you find a deal, right, you can, if it works, if it's a good deal, you can just assign it to New Western, and they'll sell it.
Interesting. And they do nationwide, or
They're in a lot of states. They're not nationwide yet, but they're soon going to be nationwide.
And which markets do you typically focus in?
Just so well, all of California.
Okay.
The reason being is that one, all my buyers are here, so it's easier for me to dispo a deal myself. Two, I know the market here really well. I grew up here all my life. I used to do other states, but I realized that if you've never been to a place, you can't really, you could do deals there, but it's going to be hard.
Yeah. And are you, do you have a license yourself?
No, I'm not licensed.
Okay. Got it. And what do you think one of the biggest misconceptions about this industry is? I mean, this is a heavily sell the dream kind of industry.
Right.
You see a lot of industry, you see a lot of influencers, you see a lot of content creators talking about this industry. Do you see Facebook groups with 50, 60,000 people on there? And if I had to guess, I'd say less than 1% have actually closed the deals, and all the rest of them are chasing the dream.
Absolutely right.
I'm curious if you've identified any, what do you call them? Kind of false hoods about them, or
right. I have a perfect one. So wholesaling, right? If you're talking about what the general concept of wholesaling is, right? A lot of people think, and this is because this is what a lot of people online are saying, you're helping a buyer out of a situation. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, my humble opinion, I don't think that's true. Wholesaling, your main job is to make an end buyer, whether a flipper or a regular buy and hold investor, your job is to get them a good deal. Your job is to make them money, right? Mm-hmm. I see a lot of wholesalers falling into the trap where they'll lock something up, right, just to get either the seller out of a situation or just to get something under contract. But as soon as they put it out on the marketplace, no one's buying it because it's not a good deal. So, and then that makes me want to ask them, how are you really helping the seller at this point if you can only help them if you sell it?
Right.
So whether you're trying to help or not, you're not really helping them if you can't sell it.
Right.
So I think their wholesalers' mentality should be focused on the buyer.
I see. Makes sense. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you're providing value to two people. You're helping. You technically are helping a seller out of a situation, mm-hmm. but you're also helping a buyer, and you need both of those. Right. But at the end of the day, the one that is the decision maker is the one with the funds.
Right. Yeah. Unless you could buy it yourself, then the decision's on someone else. And then, I would have them ask themselves, if you were the buyer, would you buy this? Mm-hmm. If it was your money.
Yeah.
If you can't say a hard yes, then it's not a good deal.
Yeah.
Or you don't know if it's a good deal or not. And that's another thing that I think a lot of wholesalers, especially when they're starting off, they need to realize or get better at knowing what a good deal looks like.
So talk to us about that. What is a good deal, and what calculations do you use to determine whether you got something worthwhile?
So I'm sure you've heard we all heard the 70% rule,
Yeah.
right? It's true, you know.
It's like 70% minus the repair value. Excuse me. So after repair value minus, excuse me, after repair value times 70%
Right.
minus the repairs for the home.
Minus the wholesale fee.
Minus the wholesale
Right.
fee.
Okay.
Right.
So
I'm going to state that one more time more clearly so I can
Sure,
get that.
sure,
Okay.
sure.
So after repair value times 70% minus the repairs minus the wholesale value. And that's wholesale commission. And that's the amount that you would need to purchase that in order for it to be a good deal.
that's the amount you offer to
Traditionally
the seller. Traditionally,
offered. Uh-huh.
right? So it really depends. That formula is true to an extent. You know, if you're having ARV of 500,000 or below, that's when that formula comes into play because, you know, the lower you go in number in ARV, the less the percentage takes away from the ARV, right? So if you get 1 million times 0.7 or 70%, it's going to take out a
Huge chunk. Yeah.
Exactly. So the lower you get in ARV, the 70% rule comes in. And then minus the repairs, and that's your, you know, minus your fee, that's your offer. The higher you go, it's usually like 74%, maybe 75%, but definitely not more than 75%.
Okay.
But another way that we do it is we do it from the flipper's point of view. So we get ARV, we subtract 6%, and 6% goes to realtor fees and closing costs once the flipper puts it back on the market. Take away 6%, then we multiply it by 0.85 because the flipper usually wants to make 15%. So 0.85 takes away 15%. And then whatever that number is, we subtract repair costs. And then we usually subtract like another 10 grand for holding costs and then our assignment fee.
I see.
And then that would be the offer. And if you did it right, doing all that should be close to the number of just doing the 0.7 or 0.74
Of the actual ARV.
Yeah. So if you do both formulas for the same deal, you should be around the same number.
Okay. Interesting. And yeah, you see that a lot. I mean, if there's $1 million house as a wholesaler, you'd be very happy taking home, 1% of that, so, whereas if you have a $300,000 house, 1% might not make it worth your while. If it's a bigger pie, you don't necessarily need a bigger percentage, but you can take like, for example, if you have $1 million house, no one's going to really split hairs over $5,000 or $10,000 maybe.
If you're a wholesaler.
Right.
I mean, and what I would say to that is I'd rather make 5,000 I'd rather split $10,000 with another wholesaler, even though the deal was huge, than not making anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because what did it take? A few phone calls,
yeah.
Looking up some numbers. You can't beat that.
Yeah. So that's what got me interested in this industry also, because I have a background in business.
Nice.
I have started several different businesses. Most recently, I was in the home service industry.
Love it.
Where
I want to get into that after, by the way.
Sure. Yeah. I'll tell you about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So the thing about the home service industry is it's really low barrier to entry. So, for example, I started a pressure washing and window company.
Awesome.
Based off of something I saw on TikTok.
Right.
In fact, I started the home service industry because I saw TikTok and I decided to do one of these testing TikTok side hustle videos.
Nice.
It went super viral. Got like 7 million views in a certain period of time. And I was like, dang, maybe I should try. Yeah. And I wasn't really super interested in it. It was fun to get the pop on social media.
Right.
But, I kind of left it at that. And my buddy said, hey, why don't you just send me more of those jobs and I'll do all the work for you. And I was like, I guess. I had a full-time job at the time. So it was kind of pennies to me. I was like, sure, no problem. I'll do the marketing and stuff and you can take the jobs and we'll split everything.
Right.
And then it kind of grew from there. And so while there's low barrier to entry in the home service industry, it's very hard to scale a home service company.
Why is that, if I may ask?
The biggest problem with scaling a home service company is that you have to stay in one geography and you have to hire a lot of people. So if you wanted to scale to a new market, you would need to go to that market, hire people, hire a manager. you need to buy a new truck.
Right.
And so it's not like you can just easily open up a new market, start the marketing and get going from like a home office. You need to actually hire people, hire managers, and it starts to get really heavy personnel wise.
Right.
And the revenue per employee starts to decrease also to a certain point. So it's not like, let's say a SaaS or software company or a marketing company where you can, you have your fixed costs and you continue to increase. The revenue per employee ends up being somewhere, let's say in the, $100,000 per year mark or something like that. Because you're essentially selling your time or your employees' time and then getting cuts on that. So it's hard to scale because you need to hire a lot of people.
Right.
W-2 employees, you're dealing with management, you're dealing with then the more employees you get, you have to start building out your, the pyramid of management and the what do you call it? The graph basically of how people are managed. So it's really hard to scale that company. And at its core, businesses are all the same thing. I was able to scale my home service business from $15,000 per month in January to last month we did $70,000.
Nice.
And pretty easily. All you got to do is you manage the supply and you manage the demand. So increase the marketing, that increases your demand. Hire a couple of employees, another truck, that increases your supply, and you just keep scaling as you go. However, you're going to hit a point where the market can't really take anymore. Because the market's too small, right? Like in our town, for example, where my business is, it has like 50,000 people in it. So we're not going to scale to 2 million per year in revenue because the market's just not big enough in that particular industry. So I was kind of faced with, okay, so either I can expand geographically to a new location or I can find a new service and then start to do it that way. But I decided that I wanted to focus on something else because business in general is the same thing. You have an offer, you have sales, and you have marketing. So the marketing is what gets all the clients. The sales is what closes the clients. And then the offer is what you have to provide the client.
Whether it's a product or a service or whatever.
Exactly. And I look at it as a pie chart. So you have offer, sales, and marketing. And the better any one of those are, the less important the other ones become. So the more amazing of an offer that you have, the less important it is that you're bringing in tons of leads, and the less important your close ratio is with the sales. And likewise, if you have an amazing sales process, well, then the offer doesn't need to be as strong, and you don't need as many leads. So they all kind of end up being a pie chart. And what I realized is that what I want to do was have something that has a lot more headroom. Like I looked at my current business and I thought, well, I'm not going to do $2 million a year in revenue without making substantial infrastructure changes to my business. So my personal goal is to make a lot of money, right?
Yeah,
nothing wrong with that. I think people.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with it, but I think people, don't always have like their interests and their interest and their actions don't align. Like they'll say, I want to make millions of dollars with this business, but then they look at like the actual potential of that business and then it's not gonna produce, the math doesn't pencil out.
Right.
And I was looking at this and I'm like, how do I scale this to get $2-3 million a year? I'm like, the math just doesn't work. It doesn't work. I would need to make substantial changes. And so that's why I started looking at something that's a little more scalable like real estate. And so that's kind of where I started to make my transition into real estate.
Oh, wow. Well,
yeah.
Real estate, especially, and this is with either wholesaling or not, or flipping or doing burrs, right? Burr is.
Yeah.
It's the total addressable market on that is hundreds of million dollars.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. It's a much, much bigger pie.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the business is the same. I can do marketing. I can do sales.
Yep.
And so all that really left is to find an offer. And so if I'm going to do all the process, I might as well do something that has a much bigger pie than has a smaller pie. So that's kind of...
Right. And like you said, business is all the same.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, that I think also, too, you come from a business background, which I think is going to do nothing but benefit you.
Yeah.
because, wholesalers as well should have an idea of, at least a small idea of how business works.
Yeah.
Because they can definitely learn how to ramp up their numbers.
Yeah. And the other really important part of that too, and I started realizing this after I started winning at the marketing, winning at the sales, and I had my offer, is there's an underlying engine that all that sits on, and that's operations.
Yep.
And operations is how you run your company. Luckily I had some experience in project management, so I worked at these tech companies. I worked at Apple and I worked at Facebook.
Nice.
Yeah.
What did you do at Apple?
As a project manager, technical project manager.
Okay. Same with Facebook?
Same with Facebook. Yeah, it was pretty much the same thing. It was the most like soul-sucking corporate environment. I thought it'd be like this sexy, like really fun, like great thing.
That's Google.
Well, they're all kind of the same thing. My wife worked at Google, and it was the same thing. Like they're just bloated corporate companies that you really aren't able to be who you are.
No, yeah.
And when I quit my job at Apple to go do this pressure washing company, it was crazy because, telling people that I work at Apple has a certain status that comes with it.
It does.
People think it's cool, whether it is or not. And I went from that to telling people that I washed windows. And I would just kind of like, I wouldn't even elaborate when someone asked me what I do. I said, oh yeah, I wash windows. Like, oh yeah, I clean houses,
Right.
And I did that almost like a way to like humble myself in a way.
Right.
But some people may see it as a step backwards because I definitely took a pay cut. I went from making a good amount of money, over $150K a year,
right.
Sitting at home doing almost nothing. Like it was crazy how little I was expected to do with these companies. Like literally like book some calendars, take meeting notes,
right.
Some small planning stuff. And from that like cushy job with, but then I just think, okay, am I ever going to make over $1 million a year in this job? No. Do I want to make over $1 million a year? Yes.
Right.
So every day that I spend at this job where my interests don't align with my actions, I'm delaying an output that could get me where I want to be in life.
Right.
And as soon as I had that realization, I couldn't go back. I quit my job. And I've been all in on this entrepreneurship challenge. And I've definitely not made nearly as much money, but I see the overhead, I see the potential is there.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people will take the short-term like salary and say, wow, I made this X amount of money. I could just stay here for the next 20 years and retire. And that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me, I had a particular goal in mind, and I wanted to make as much money as possible. I wanted to be in control of my future,
Exactly.
I hated having to, I get anxiety when I think about someone says that you have to sit in this office from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. You cannot leave. Doctor's appointment, you have to ask me for permission.
Right.
Did you go to the bathroom for 10 minutes? What were you doing in the bathroom for 10 minutes? People are on your ass.
Clock out during
sit
the break.
here. Yeah, clock out while you eat, in this dark room.
Yep.
And you're not going to be allowed to, pretty much do anything except what we tell you to do, look busy. And that feeling just gave me crazy anxiety.
Yeah.
And the second I was able to, trade that lifestyle for a lifestyle where I'm in control, I took that immediately. And
good.
Yeah.
That's definitely good for you because, I know a bunch of people, not in real estate, not in business, who, make $200K a year, $300K a year. Some family members too who make good amount of money, and they jump with joy at the fact hey, I'm gonna make 100 and something next year, and it sounds good to them, but to me it's look, I know some wholesalers who ripped 100K on one deal.
Yeah.
And that's one deal in the entire year. So, to me, if someone's going to offer me $500,000 a year to work at a job, I'm probably say no. Because I know
that's a hard one to say no to.
Because to me, it's okay, well, 500,000, it's a lot of money, but it doesn't amount to the amount of time it's going to take out of your life.
Yeah.
And I would rather make 100K, but I could still wake up when I want. I could still come to San Diego when I want, right?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, you know.
Yeah.
Nothing beats your time, and I'm a big advocate for taking control of your time.
Yeah. Did you go to college?
I went to Cal State Long Beach for about a semester, but that's about it. I never finished. I did go to community college first when I first got out of high school. I majored in theater arts.
Yeah. All right.
I used to be an actor.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, I was in a few plays and went to Cal State Long Beach for a bit, and no one was making money in that field, so I know a lot of people in, actors and stuff like that are struggling. So I don't want to be like that.
Is that what brought you to LA, or were you from LA?
I'm from LA.
Okay.
Born and raised in East LA.
Okay.
So not good of a neighborhood, but it's getting good now.
Yeah. California, it's like hard to find like rougher neighborhoods.
It's but yeah, I'm born and raised in LA, and out of all places, this is where all the actors are. So I kind of fell into it.
Yeah.
But seeing how much people struggled there, and I know a lot of people who are still, they're way older than me. I'm 27, by the way. I just turned 27.
Okay.
A lot older than me, and they're still trying to chase that dream of being an actor, and still working at like a restaurant,
Home Depot,
or a Home Depot, and then doing it wasn't for me.
Yeah. I think, when you're young, it's important that you have income, period.
100%.
A lot of people will sit on their ass and be like, oh yeah, I'm trying to get this business going, trying to get this business. But like, if you're, there's only so much time in the day that you can be working on a business, I've learned.
Right.
And that's something that I've dealt with as far as a frustration, because, like the fighter in you wants to be able to work towards your goal and your dream every single day. Like you want to be able to spend like 10 hours a day, but a lot of times it's about, like if I think about like a tennis analogy, you are, you're hitting the ball and you're hitting all these balls, and sometimes you have to wait for some of them to come back.
Right.
And there's something to be said about being patient. Some of this stuff takes time. It took you, a while to get your first deal.
Right.
And so I think, but while you were waiting to make that happen, you had an income. And I think that's super important. And I think you took a leap really early.
I did.
After your first $1,300 deal.
Trust me, I struggled.
Yeah.
But it was super early. But we each have our own personalities. I'm more of a spontaneous person. So
yeah.
I mean, you know me. We barely met. And here I am.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's kind of what it takes, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I find in common is like when you find a doer, like doers just do. They get up, they don't ask too many questions. They're like, this may be a complete disaster. This may be worth absolutely nothing, but I'm going to plant these seeds. I'm going to hit these balls,
right,
and let's see what comes back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Doers, and I know a doer when I see one.
Yeah.
And when I looked you up, I'm like, this guy's a doer, just
yeah.
like me.
And the way that you were so quick to be interested in doing a podcast.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, this guy, okay, cool. You know what? You don't ask too many questions. You're like, let's just do it. Let's,
I think we only messaged like
a couple times. You're like, let's do it. I'm like, hey, you know what? This guy's a doer.
Yeah.
I already saw it for sure. And that's what it takes. It's like being a little bit naive, being a little bit, not being afraid to make these.
Yeah. Not being afraid just to, either look dumb, ask questions, stuff like that, and just, I know I also help some startups kind of get off their feet, and I can tell the ones that are not going to amount to anything because, it's the same stuff. Well, hey guys, we got to meet. We got to talk about some stuff. Oh, we'll do it after Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
After Halloween comes, oh, we'll do it after Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving comes, oh, we'll do it after the holidays. Like, hey, this has to be done now. We just we could have been making money at this time.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, tell me about what you've got going with this kind of thing that you're helping other entrepreneurs, things like that.
it's something that I do just to make a little bit extra money. It's not my forte. Like I know business. I'm pretty well versed in it, but if someone needs help, hey, I need to learn how to start a bar, start a restaurant. How do I do it? How do I find the funding? How do I talk to investors? How do I make financial statements? All that stuff.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah. Stuff I studied.
Mm-hmm.
So I just help them out.
That's one thing I think people need to be really careful about is if you'll notice, there are so many people willing to help you build a wholesale business these days.
Right. Right.
Everybody is willing to help you there's so many coaches.
Oh.
It's so easy to be a coach, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be careful about who you take advice with. I do martial arts, I do jiu-jitsu.
Nice,
and
nice.
one thing I learned early on was you got to be careful who you take your advice from.
Yes.
Because if you're taking advice from a white belt or a blue belt, that advice may even be good.
Right.
But it's not black belt advice. And if you follow that advice information compounds. So if you spend 2 or 3 years doing a move a way a white belt told you,
right.
That's going to have a different compounding effect on your trajectory if you were to spend the same years doing a move the way the black belt told you.
Right.
There's so many details in certain things.
Right. It's like working out. It's like if someone teaches you, okay, well, you have to work out like this.
Mm-hmm.
Then you do that for months. Then someone comes and like, no, you're supposed to have it closer to your,
Mm-hmm.
You're going to, all that time you could have been building the muscle. You weren't really doing anything.
Yeah. Alex Hormozy calls it paying down the ignorance debt. Right. So it's like you can pay it off several different ways by doing certain things or by, we all pay for education in some way or another.
Right. Right.
You're either going to pay for, pay in your time because of how it can take you a lot longer to do something.
Right. Like me.
Yeah. Or you could pay somebody money, then that person could show you how to do things. And
right.
That's one thing that I learned quickly. I think my martial arts background kind of gave me that confidence too, to say that there's levels to these games, to everything.
Right.
And it's so important to seek out the experts in these fields. Mm-hmm. Do you have a coach of any sort?
I do not have a coach myself. However, I do have my own program, and I do teach people.
Yeah.
And I've been teaching for the last almost 2 years now. And I actually worked with another company, and their company was, they're a huge, recurring business model that's been around for 30 years. It's mainly seminars and stuff like that. And their whole objective is just to sell a huge, high ticket program. And I coached in that program for a while, and then I left, due to differences, and I started my own with one of my business partners, Steve.
Okay.
Steve. Shout out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. And so we've got about 10, 15 more minutes now. We're really quickly.
Sure.
We're at 2:00.
Sure.
So I want to ask you.
Went by fast.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you what tips you have for beginners that are just getting into the industry.
I think a good tip is to follow what you just said, Alistair, is that you're either going to pay with your time or you're going to invest in leveraging other people's experience and getting it done faster, right? Because you need knowledge, right? To be successful in anything, you need knowledge, you need tools, and you need experience, right? The knowledge you can find anywhere online. You can look up YouTube videos and stuff like that. Tools, you can pay for them. There's tools out there that'll, prop stream, all that stuff, right? And then there's experience, which you can do yourself, or you can also invest in someone else's experience and leverage their experience and expedite your journey. And that's what basically what books are. Whenever you read a book, you're taking someone's life experience and then reading it in a couple days and then learning from it.
Or a podcast.
Listening to it. Exactly. You can take 1 hour, listen to a podcast, and learn or leverage what that person did for an entire year, and use it for your advantage.
Yeah.
So that's one tip. And then another tip to get started in wholesaling is, I would say, Um, Focus on the true objective, which is make sure that when you're looking for deals, you're thinking, is this something that I would buy? If it's something that I would buy, it's something my buyers would buy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On that note, I just want to say that I have a coach also. I have two coaches.
Nice.
And they're not cheap. You know, I spend a lot of money, considerable amount of money every month on coaching. I have one coach that's industry specific, so for my home service business.
Nice.
He's someone that does millions of dollars a year in revenue for his business.
Awesome.
And I sit with him 30 minutes a week, and we go over KPIs, we go over strategy. I have someone reliable that I know that I can always go to when I have questions about the business. And I also have another coach who's an accountability coach.
I love that.
Yeah. So I saw this on an Instagram post, and it's this accountability coaching program. And I'm like, you know what? I think I need that, you know? And so we basically meet every week for about 20 minutes.
Awesome.
And we make 3 goals of things I'm going to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And then this time, the first thing is like, how many of us don't make goals every week? Like, you might make some goals once in a while. I want to make this much revenue. I want to do this much. But like, I have a commitment every single week for 20 minutes, reserved time, where that's all I do is I focus on my goals for the previous week.
Good.
And I know that if Thursday night rolls around and I didn't do those things, I'm going to have to tell my coach that I slacked off.
Right. And then you're going to have to hear from him.
And just the procrastinator in me, like most of my stuff gets done Thursday night before my Friday morning appointment.
Right.
And it's just, the thing about coaching is, the thing about business and coaching is, if you have a job where, let's say, you make $10,000 a month, mm-hmm. well, every dollar that you spend on something comes out of that $10,000 a month.
Right.
With business, there is no $10,000 a month. So there's no pie that piece gets taken out of. Mm-hmm. All there are inputs and outputs. So if I spend $1 and this $1 makes me $2, well, I would do that all day long. Right. I'd spend $1 million and get $2 million back.
Exactly.
So with coaching, I look at it the same way. It's input versus output. I put in this X amount of money per month,
right.
and I know that I'm able to grow the pie because I'm able to do that.
Right, right.
And I think getting out of the mentality of having a fixed pie is really important, because in business, there is no fixed pie. It's like how much you spend on advertising a month. Well, it's not a matter of how much I spend on advertising a month. It's what kind of return do I get on the advertising dollars that I spend.
Right, exactly.
And as long as you're getting a positive return on your investment, you know, if I told you that I could build a machine for you that you put $1 in and you get $3 out on the other side, how much money would you put in? As much as you beg, borrow, and steal to put as much money as possible into that machine.
100%.
And that's business.
Exactly.
And so people that have this fixed mentality or like this finite mentality, I think can't really wrap their heads around that. That's why I'm always looking for ways that I can invest my time, invest my money into places that are going to compound those things over time.
100%. And, you know, I talk to a lot of wholesalers almost every day, seeing if my program is right for them. And that, you know, that's one of the first things that I say. It's like, look, this is an investment, right? You're investing in your future. It is a mentality, you know, it's a mentality that people have to, you know, switch. It's like, this is, you know, if you're looking at money as something that's scarce in your life, and then it's always going to be scarce. Mm-hmm. And a good friend of mine used to say that if, you know, when we're selling tickets to places and stuff, it's like, let's say it's $200, right? If $200 is a lot for you now, it's always going to be a lot for you. You know, but it is the mentality, you know, investing in your education, in your future, will eventually bring input into your life, right? So,
yeah, absolutely. So, before we head out, can you tell us about your program and where people can find more about you?
Sure. So, Steve Barry, my business partner and I, we created something called the Profit Playbook. And the Profit Playbook is basically what separates us from, you know, like you said, there's a bunch of coaches out there, right? There's a bunch of people wanting to coach, and I understand that. There's nothing wrong with that. But we saw an opportunity where we can really not only sell a great product, but also get more people involved in closing deals. So we created a semester-based program where we have 4 semesters. Each semester is 6 months, right? So semester 1 is wholesaling. Semester 2 is flipping. Semester 3 is project management. Semester 4 is rentals. You can choose to, invest in all at the same time, or you can just invest each semester at a time. That's what we recommend. But basically, we're one of the only coaching programs with an actual curriculum, right? You come in with an objective. Our objective for you is to close your first deal within 6 months, right? We have a curriculum that you have to follow, and we have assignments that you have to do. If you don't do the assignments, you can't move on to the next section. We have the tools. We have a CRM that we give all of our students. We have landing pages, text blasters, automations for emails, all that stuff, right? And we have, at the end of the coaching, we have a mentorship where you actually get partnered up with an active wholesaler, and you close your first deal with them.
Okay.
So we don't say it's a coaching program. There's coaching in it, but it's more of a mentorship, 100%. You get partnered with me, you get partnered with one of my other wholesalers, and you close a deal together from beginning to end.
That's great.
And that's the objective. And, you can find it on morettagroup.com/education. One more time, morettagroup.com/education, and all the information's there.
Cool. All right. Well, my personal journey has just recently began. So
Awesome.
I'm looking to grow my real estate business, started from scratch, from absolutely zero, knowing absolutely nothing about real estate. And I'm so happy to have met you and reached out as an
likewise.
expert in the field. And, reaching out to experts and improving our knowledge is one of the biggest things that we can do, because at the end of the day, you can take everything from you. Take your car, your house, your money. But if you have the knowledge of how to do certain things, then you can be right back to where you were in 6 months. And, with having a good team and having the knowledge of things to do. So
And
that's
having
really
money
important.
in your pocket.
Money in your pocket helps. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what we strive for.
All right. Thank you very much, Michael.
Thank
It's
you
been a
so
pleasure.
much. Oh, yeah.
All right. Subscribe. We'll be doing a lot more of this kind of stuff in the future. Real estate, wholesaling, businesses, scaling a business,
Yep.
quitting your job, taking the leap, all that kind of stuff and more. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and hope this was helpful. Subscribe. We're going to have a lot more of this stuff coming down the way. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, man. That was
Yeah,
fun.
that was nice. Yeah.
It's my
Went
second
by quick.
podcast ever.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
The first one was recently, too?